All right. Okay, you ready to rock and roll?
We're ready to go.
All right. Okay, we still have plenty of people joining, but as you are joining, good morning to everybody. Sarah McKinney here with the Athens Area Community Foundation. Welcome to our 2011 1800th nonprofit leader call for COVID-19. I have no idea what week we are on, so I just made up a number. Let's see. Sorry, I was just making sure somebody just chatted something. All right, I think we're ready to rock and roll. I am recording this session so that we can distribute it later. And I welcome you all. Thank you for your consistent presence on this call. It has been a bright spot for me each week. I've really enjoyed seeing everyone and learning together, and I appreciate you all so very much. I thank United Way of Northeast Georgia and Envision Athens for partnering to bring these calls to life each and every week. Y'all, we've got a very special opportunity today to hear from Robyn Miller with Pro Bono Partnership of Atlanta. If you all do not know about Pro Bono Partners, I encourage you to do so. They have held or helped us host 2 trainings through our nonprofit training series the last couple of years, and they've been absolutely outstanding. Pro Bono Partners is based in Atlanta. They engage volunteer attorneys to help provide nonprofits across the state, really, as I understand, with access to business and legal services. They have been incredibly communicative and have taken an incredible role as a leader, providing ample updates to legal needs during COVID-19's outbreak, and here recently have provided very timely materials on the Paycheck Protection Program, and most recently for the loan forgiveness planning. I will link, Robyn, several of the articles in our chat, but without further ado, because I'm excited to learn from you today, I welcome Robyn Miller to this call. Robyn is a senior corporate and tax counsel with Pro Bono. She has over 25 years of corporate and tax exempt law experience. You can read all about her on their website. She has extensive experience providing support for nonprofits and has written some extraordinary articles on paycheck protection and among other things. So Robyn, thank you so very much for joining us today. I think you are unmuted, and share your knowledge. Go ahead, Robyn.
Well, thank you, Sarah. That was a really nice introduction. I recognize some of my clients on the call, so it's good to see some of you. I can't see everybody. Hey, Sally. I can't see everybody, so I can only see like 8 other people. So I don't know how to fix that. So I assume if people have questions, they'll just chime in. And really, my goal, Sarah asked if one of us could share about paycheck protection, and of course Rachel asked me to do it because that's what I've been doing since March 20th, is focus on what the CARES Act was going to cover, what it has covered, what the options are for our clients, and really tried to get information out as quickly as possible because time is of the essence with this. But I want to be here for you. Sarah and I talked briefly or emailed back and forth, and it seems everyone's applied. You still can technically apply. So if you haven't, you still can. There's still money. I think people are thinking that the money will run out soon, but it lasted a lot longer this second go around than people thought it would, which is the way it should be, honestly. I think most people are now focused on forgiveness. But like I said, I really want to help you. So any questions you have, I really want to hear from you and try and answer those as best I can. I don't know where everyone is education-wise with this whole process. I presume most of you have applied and gotten PPP loans of some sort. So I'm just going to kind of give you a quick overview and then try to answer as many questions as I can. I do want to, and Sarah pointed out, we have 2 articles that we just updated this week. So it seems when you're a young associate, every Friday afternoon, you would kind of want to go into hiding because partners go around their firms and try and find somebody, a young associate who can spend all weekend doing a project in the office. And I kind of feel like the SBA has done that to me ever since the beginning of April, because it seems like every Friday after 4:30, they put out new guidance, which is what they did last Friday. They put out the loan forgiveness application. So if you haven't seen that, it is online at the SBA, and we have a link to it in our most recent article that came out on Tuesday. So I spent Sunday revising our loan forgiveness article, and then drafting another article specifically about sort of the application and the changes resulting from the application. So we had put out an article last week, or maybe even the week before, on loan forgiveness in general, because we kept waiting for the regulations that were supposed to come out and they didn't. So we just put something out, and now we've revised both of those things as of Tuesday. So take a look at those, and I'm going to talk from that a bit. I have to say that this is ever changing, which is my point in saying that every Friday I'm looking at something new. The SBA is constantly trying to address these issues. You know, none of this is normal. It's really the wild, wild west through this whole process. And it's going to continue that way because the program's going to end pretty quickly. So, you know, there's interim final rules. There is no such thing under the Proper Procedures Act, the American Procedures Act, where you're supposed to have certain procedures for establishing rules and regulations at the federal level. And those have all been thrown out the window because we're in a national emergency. So most of the information that's coming out is through the FAQs that you all may be aware of, and then through these things that they just put out that they say, okay, here it is, here's how we're going to handle this. So it is complicated, it is constantly changing, and we are here to try and help everyone through that. And that's the best I can tell you. Unfortunately, no one really has all the answers. And the SBA I believe the SBA is trying to do the best they can, and they're doing a pretty darn good job at addressing the issues as they come up. All right, so how does it work? Forgiveness, which is everyone's focus. If anyone got an EIDL advance, which was that free potential $10,000, and they basically gave $1,000 per employee. If anyone got that, that counts against your forgiveness under Paycheck Protection. So if you got both, you're going to have to pay back some of the money that you got. You can't get forgiveness for all of it. So keep that in mind. Now, if you applied for Paycheck Protection after you got your EIDL and you included that information in your application, they probably took that into account in giving you the amount that they gave you and reduced it. If not, if you got it separate and distinct, then be aware that on the application form, and the forgiveness application form is like a simplified tax return. You can do it on your own. You just have to really read the instructions carefully. And then we have these articles that can kind of help guide you through it. But it really is step 1, step 2, step 3. It consists of the actual forgiveness application. And then it consists of a Schedule A and a Schedule A worksheet. So of course you start with the Schedule A worksheet and work through that. And they have instructions for it. And it literally says, hey, fill in on line 4 the answer that you come up with under that worksheet, you know, number 4, whatever it is, and it guides you through the whole process. It's not that complicated, but you start with the worksheet, then you get to the schedule, and then everything goes on the main form. And I'm always looking at it from the non-tax perspective. I try to put the eyes of my clients on when I write articles and when I'm looking at these kinds of forms. And I believe that y'all can figure it out and get it done. But we are here with questions if you have questions. So one of the things that they do in the actual application is say, did you get this EIDL and how much? And they subtract that from your forgiveness, because at the end of the application, it tells you the amount of your eligible forgiveness that you're applying for, essentially. All right, so then there's 4 major thresholds that you have to meet for forgiveness. It can all be forgiven if you meet the 4 thresholds. And 3 of the thresholds are related to one another. A lot of people seem to have gotten their money on May 11th. I don't know if that's true for everybody, but that seems to have been a big date. So it's like now really hitting because it's May 21. And so the 3 that are interrelated involve payroll, right? So the first test is 75% or more of your expenditures from this money has to be spent on payroll and payroll costs. And we've described in our article all of what's included in payroll costs. I'm not going to go into that unless somebody really wants me to. It does include group insurance. I think the big question, and this was resolved with the application, is, well, when are those costs incurred, right? But let me just first back up and say the other 2 that implicate here is not only just payroll costs, 75% has to be used for that, but then within that, you can't have reduced your salaries of people or wages of your workers by more than 25%. And that's a comparison. Everything's a comparison, and we'll talk about that briefly too. But the other third piece is that you can't have reduced your FTEs. And until Friday at 4:30, no one knew what FTE meant. Now we know. So like I said, it's constantly evolving, and I only feel for you because you have to do the calculations. All right, the 4th aspect of what you have to comply with for forgiveness is you can spend up to 25% on sort of these other ongoing costs. And we'll talk about what those are. So the 75% has to be spent on, like I said, on payroll costs. Now, let's think about what money you got. What you submitted was, you said, okay, here's our 2019 average monthly payroll. And from that, you multiplied that by 2.5 times, which means of the sort of 1/5, if you break it down into 5 pieces, 4 of those pieces should equal your payroll for 8 weeks, which is the comparison. It's, and then you have another 1/5, which is less than 75%, to use for other costs. But that assumes that your payroll is the same or not less, and your FTEs are the same and not less from December 31, 2019. So you kind of have to start with that perspective, because there's these exceptions that they allow for. But the big picture is, if you don't rehire people that you let go right away, you're not going to spend enough money in that 8 weeks to cover that 75%. So I'm going to go through the different thresholds, but you always have to be thinking, if you weren't like you were last year, you got to get there pretty quick, or do something different to get there in some way, and be thinking about that. One of the big changes they made in the application was, we've all heard about this 8-week covered period, and it officially started before the application came out. It started the day you got your money. Starts your 8-week clock, your 56 days. But in the application, they said, well, for payroll, we're going to give you this alternative payroll covered period, where you could choose to wait and not start your 56 days until your next payroll starts. And what that does, because another factor is the CARES Act itself said that the money had to be, the costs had to be incurred and paid in that 8-week period. Well, a lot of people were like, well, what if I get it on the 11th and that takes me through July 5th, but I pay payroll on the 15th, only those 4 days count? How does that work? And then what about the payroll from July 1st through the 5th? Do I have to pay out again on the 5th in order to get it covered? Because it was what was incurred and paid. The application changed that and said, look, so it changed two things. One, it gave you this option to pick your payroll periods to match up with your regular payroll. The other thing that it did was it said, it's not paid and incurred. It's not incurred and paid. It's incurred or paid. So if you get it on May 11th and you have payroll on May 15th and you pay May 1st through May 15th payroll out of your paycheck protection money, that's okay, because you're paying it on that date and it all is covered. It's all included in forgiveness. It's not just from the 11th through the 15th. The entire amount will be included. It's forgiven. And then if you incurred the cost on July 5th, but you don't pay it out until July 15th, you can still use paycheck protection money to pay the July 1st through the July 5th as forgiven costs. Right, I'm going to stop for a second and see if anybody has any questions on that.
Y'all feel free to use the chat feature along the way.
Oh, I don't even know how to see the chat feature.
And I should have told you, Robyn, we'll monitor it for you.
Okay, great.
No questions yet, which means we're furiously taking notes. And we're all doing math about cost incurred, paid. At least I am.
Well, and the only thing to think about, you don't even have to do the math. The key is that if you incurred it or you paid it, one is okay. You don't have to do both, which was the really complex part where people were like, well, okay, so if I go through July 5th, does that mean I have to do another extra payroll? Because otherwise it's only incurred and not paid. And then do I have to break out my payroll from May 11th through the 15th and cover that cost as incurred and paid? And they're reducing that complication. And they just said, look, we're not going to make it that complicated. And so that's wonderful news. It gives you a little more flexibility. It gives you a little bit of an ability to manage it. But the other thing they offered was this alternative payroll covered period, which means if you got your money on the 11th, you don't have to start using it until the 16th. And you can choose that to be your covered period so that it actually does match and does line up.
Robyn, we just have one question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's only for payroll costs, though. I want to make that really clear. That's really important. It's only for payroll costs that you can choose that alternative time period. Otherwise, the regular 8-week period, which is the day you get it to the day it ends, it applies for all your other costs. So that gets a little more complicated, but that's what the rule is. All right, question.
Yeah, so we do, this is Kay, and I'm going to be the one that helps with the questions so you don't have to watch the chat. So I have a question, and then also we have a question in the chat. So let's go ahead and address the one in the chat. If the PPP funds are deposited to one bank account and we pay our payroll from another bank account, is this going to be problematic?
You should actively make the transfer for the amount from one account, from the PPP account to your account that you pay payroll out of, so that it's really clear that you have that debit to prove that you use that money for that. I will tell you that, excuse me, that they're not asking for that documentation with what you have to submit. You have to submit 941s, but you do want to have that audit trail. So you want to be able to tie to, okay, here's our payroll amount, so we took it out of here, and this is what we paid, and it matches on our 941. It matches what we took out. Then there's the group health costs, which again, you can take it out, put it in your account, and then pay it, and make sure it's the equivalent amount, and document what it was paid for in your notes as you debit that account.
Okay, I think, Leslie, hopefully that clears up your question. I see a head nod and two thumbs up. So thanks for asking that question. And I will tell you, and on that, I was actually advised I have my PPP funds for my business at one account, at one bank, and my payroll comes out of another bank. And I was actually told to do it each week, so it's very trackable, even though they may not ask for that paperwork. So every week that I do my payroll for my business, I transfer, I'm writing a check out of one bank to the other bank. So I think just that paper trail is like, the more paper trail you can create, the better. And if they don't ask for it, that's fine, but you've got it, because it's really hard to go back and do that.
Yes. And here's the other thing. They said in the application, you have to keep it for 6 years.
Yeah.
All your documentation. So you should document that you needed it, that you need. Now, they've passed this rule that there's safe harbor, that if you're under $2 million, that you don't have to certify that you don't have to prove that you needed the money and that you were in a position where you were losing money or you hadn't received enough income or you were in difficult straits. However, in the certifications on the application, they ask you to certify it all over again. Be sure you do not check the box that you are 2 million or more in revenue. That's really critical, because that will put you in the audit box for sure. And so, but I still recommend that any decision making that the board made, that the executives made in your organization, that you did to determine that you needed to apply, keep that for 6 years, in addition to all of this documentation. And I will say that the application literally gives you a list of what you need to submit and to get the forgiveness. And it's mostly 941s, and then of course evidence of the other 25%, but also group insurance payments. And so there are specific things. Our article doesn't go into that in detail, because literally if you open up the application, the second to last page, I think it's page 11, lists all the things that you need to submit. And those are the things you should keep at a minimum.
Okay, we've got 2 other questions that came up, Robyn, and I think this is a great sign that we're getting this many questions. So if you're good, we'll keep on with the questions. Yeah. Is that good for you? Okay. Mm-hmm. Does the payroll cost include taxes and insurance?
So payroll costs include the employee portion of taxes and state and local taxes as well, but it does not include the employer portion of federal taxes.
Okay. As per the, okay. I think if that didn't clear that up, if acceptance will put in the chat that it did not clear it up, then we'll keep asking. As per the instructions of the original application we submitted total payroll costs. We have continued to receive some grant funding that partially covers payroll. How do we break out the grant funds without looking as if the payroll went down from original application?
Well, so if you got grant funds that are restricted, that are to be used for payroll, you're going to run into issues because you've got 2 buckets of money that are supposed to cover the same costs. And you have to spend what you told them you used in 2019. So you either, if your grant allows you to wait and pay that money later, then I wouldn't use that grant money for now. If you have to use that grant money, then you're not going to be able to use the paycheck protection money for that purpose. Now, there are a few things that you can do. You are permitted. So there's that threshold of $100,000. You can't pay salary of someone that annualized would be over $100,000. And the application actually gives you a specific dollar amount, per employee. But you could, so if your average employee is making, say, maybe one employee is $40,000 and one employee $60,000 a year, you don't have to worry about it. But you could, if you normally give a bonus at the end of the year, or people have been working in COVID-19 conditions, you can give a bonus as long as it's reasonable now with those monies. That is an option. It has to be reasonable, but you can have some kind of bonus structure that makes sense to give people. And the other issue is a lot of organizations give out their bonuses in the first quarter. So there's three parts, right? So there's 75%, you have to spend 75%. But in addition, you can't have reduced salaries by more than 25%. And that comparison is to your first quarter of 2020. So whatever your salaries were or wages were first quarter of 2020 for each employee, and it's each employee other than those making over 100,000. They don't look at it for that. But every other employee, you literally have to calculate in the application for each employee that amount. What were they making before in the first quarter, and what are they making now? Now there is this safe harbor that said, well, if you reduce salaries between February 15th and April 26th, so long as you get it back up by June 30th, you're okay. But that's not going to get you to the 75%. So you want to get that salary back up or wages back up immediately upon getting the PPP. And you can make it even more if you want. There's nothing to say that you can't pay them a little extra with this money, because everyone's struggling in various different ways. But you want to do that comparison by employee to make sure. So those organizations that gave bonuses in first quarter, now your average is much higher than normal throughout the rest of the year. So you have to take that into consideration. The other key element, of course, is FTEs. And the FTE that they're evaluating, and there's two different options, and you pick. So you need to run the numbers and look at the two different time periods that they're comparing to decide which FTE time period you're going to. You can't reduce FTEs at all. If you do, you lose some of your forgiveness. So the question was, well, what's an FTE? Under ACA, it's 30 hours. They decided that it's under 40 hours. 40 hours a week is the FTE amount under this program, under CARES Act. So, which wasn't defined until last Friday at 4:30. So what you do is you take your average number of FTEs during your 8-week period, or whichever 8-week period it is, your alternative payroll period, if that's what you chose, or the general covered period, whichever period you choose for payroll. And then you have to compare it to either February 15th to June 30th of 2019, or basically the first 2 months of 2020, January 1 to February 29 of 2020. Except that they extended that. I take that back. Now it's through March 31 of 2020. They extended that in the application. So you're looking at that comparison. That was one of the changes that they made, was they extended that to March 31. So you have to compare first quarter FTEs to this quarter, or to your 8-week period. There are some safe harbors. So let's say you get your money on May 11th and you had let go 3 employees, and you contact them and try to rehire them. And one of them says, no, thanks, I'm not coming back. You want to document that resignation, that you offered them the job and they turned it down. And then you've got a safe harbor for that FTE, whether it's a partial FTE, a part-time person or a full-time person, because you calculate that. You actually calculate that on the form by person. You list out each person's name and their last 4 digits of their social security number in the application, and in Schedule A, and determine those amounts. But they also added 3 more safe harbors, because I had a client call me last week and they're like, well, what if I have to fire somebody because it's not working out and it's a problem? Well, in the application, they said there are 3 other safe harbors. If you have to fire someone for cause, it's got to be for cause, then that's fine. You won't lose. That's a safe harbor. You won't lose forgiveness. If somebody voluntarily resigns in the 8 weeks, you won't lose forgiveness. And if somebody voluntarily requests a reduction in hours, you won't lose forgiveness. However, you still have to meet the 75%. So even if you get these safe harbors, you've got to then rejigger and either hire new people right away or figure out or increase other people's salaries and work hours. You don't have to worry about the work hours so much as the amount that you're paying out in payroll still has to be that 75%. So you've got to be thoughtful about this process and try and do a little bit of the numbers, like you said, Sarah, to figure out what's your best approach to meet that 8-week forgiveness period. All right, that's a lot that I just presented. So questions on that?
We've got some more questions. So are telecom expenses, for example, cell phone and or internet, considered utilities for PPP?
Okay, so I haven't gotten to that, but we can talk about what it does cover, and I'm happy to go through all that. And they gave us some additional information on that as well. So let's see, are there any other questions about payroll and that aspect of it? Now,
yeah, I think
let me say one other thing. If you go to the alternative payroll method, that covered period, then, there's been a lot of talk about, well, submit your application as soon as possible, but you have to wait until you've incurred all the costs. So if you go with the alternative method, or if you don't, let's say you don't go with the alternative method for a minute, and your payroll, in your 8-week period is May 11th through July 5th. You are going to incur it on July 5th. You're not going to pay it out till the 15th. So you won't have that evidence until after that point. So, because even if it was incurred, you still have to actually show you paid it. So you won't be able to apply until after July 15th for your forgiveness. So just keep that in mind as well as you go through the process. All right. So questions on the 25%, up to 25%. Now you don't have to use any of that 25% for any of these things. You could use it all on payroll if you have it. Some of our clients have had to hire additional people. They've had to pay people more because they're working every day in this environment. And so they don't have an issue. They're going to spend all their PPP money on payroll. All right, so the fourth consideration is how you can spend the other money. And it can be used on mortgage interest. Now, all of these expenses have to have been in place by February 15th. So you can't go out and get new internet service and then pay that. That won't be forgiven because you have to actually show that you had the contract in place on February 15th. Can't refinance a mortgage either because that's a new mortgage. Don't sign a new lease in the 8-week period and have it start. It won't be covered. All those sorts of things. So it includes mortgage interest, it includes rent, and then utilities, and then interest on other debt obligations. So, and they particularly pointed out, like if you have a company car and you're paying personal property debt, that is also included and can be covered as a forgivable expense. All right, so what is included with utilities? Well, they did not give us any more guidance on that. And it's still electric, gas, water, transportation, telephone, and internet access. And that's all the information I have on it. I wish I had more. They did say they're coming out with more guidance. When, I don't know. But they did not touch on this at all, other than to say the personal property debt obligation would be covered. The interest on it would be covered. So if it's internet, it's internet. They didn't really describe any further what any of those things mean.
Robyn, we do have a question on is pay for contract worker, for example, independent contractors versus employees, an eligible expense?
No. Nothing involving independent contractors is eligible. Independent contractors had to apply for PPP on their own. And in fact, I had a client who only has independent contractors and applied and got money. And she said they were employees. And I said, you have to give that money back. And she did, because she wouldn't get any forgiveness. Independent contractors are absolutely not included as forgivable expense.
Robyn, are there federal guidelines for Corona environment reasonable markup for hazard pay bonus rates?
No, they're not. Everyone's kind of out there doing what seems right. You know, I've got one client that has residential homes where they work with those who are disabled, and they were paying people whatever it took for them to come in and keep working. You know, what they could get people to come in for and what it was worth it for. You know, and make sure that those folks were staying healthy. So there isn't anything on that at the moment. We are seeing organizations that are starting to open up. We've put out some guidance on that. We have a really good webcast that was done by an employment group on opening up and some of the rules and some of the things to think about. Lots of people are very nervous because no one knows what that liability is going to be. And that's still, you know, an open issue. You know, and as some of our clients are taking on volunteers again, we're starting to update volunteer releases. And also we have a supplemental guideline form that our clients will, once we give it to them, they'll need to follow the CDC guidelines and see how they're changing to make sure they're complying with that and updating it. So right now, you know, the rule is if you get on an airplane, you probably don't want somebody to volunteer for you for the next 14 days after they get off that airplane. And that's the guidance from the CDC. If somebody travels out of the country, you know, if somebody has been, you know, with someone who is infected, they have all those rules. Those rules will start potentially to change. And so we've told our clients where we've helped them with this, you now need to follow you know, and check every week or two what the guidance is from the CDC, as well as OSHA, because OSHA has guidelines as well. And that will apply to a number of our clients, depending on their size and so on, what they do.
Robyn, is health insurance, is healthcare insurance considered a payroll expense in that 75%?
Yes. In fact, there's a separate line for some of the other traditional expenses for employees on the actual application. So that includes group health insurance. It also includes insurance that is paid individually but covered by the employer. So there's a specific line to include those costs in that 75%. It also has one for payment for vacation, leave, sick leave, medical leave, as long as those aren't covered by the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, right? FFCRA. So as long as you're not taking the payroll tax credit for those employees for that time period, then it comes out of the 75% and is included. It also includes that state and local taxes are included. There's a line for that.
We have a request here to get a copy of the volunteer release. Is that something, Robyn, that you can share with Sarah?
Unfortunately, we can only give those, like our clients are contacting us with their releases and we're updating them specifically with them. We did put out an article, I think, that covers a lot of that just the other day. And Sally's shaking her head. that we did that talks about it and explains it. So that is out there also on our website that addresses that issue. But we can't, our malpractice insurance would cut us off if we started handing out sample forms to nonprofits.
Sarah will share that in the chat for you. And I want to remind everybody to be looking at the chat as far as questions, but also you can save that chat. We are recording this call today, but you can save that chat to your own computer with the, at the very bottom, you'll see 3 dots there. If you click on that, it gives you the option to save that chat. So if any of that information is interesting to you, you may want to save that. I'll just ask a question, Robyn. Just
let me just say one thing. So our website is it's Pro Bono Partnership, so pbpatl.org, and the first thing that comes up is a big coronavirus. And if you click on that, it'll take you to a link, and we have a listing of every single thing we've put out related to COVID-19. And so if you go to that list, it'll show you all of our webcasts, all of our articles and everything. And it's from bottom to top by date. I have to tell you, our website's old. We need a new one. We were hoping to do that, and then COVID-19 hit. So it's hard to see older posts and to prioritize things as easily. But if you go to that list, you can see everything and click on just what you need. So even if you don't save the chat, just go to our website and click there, and you can find a lot of great information.
I'll say that our Sarah McKinney is always about 3 steps ahead of all of us, and she had previously put that in the chat there. You can get me back for that later, Sarah, for that little kudos for you. So she has put that website link in the chat there for you, and also Robyn's name and information there. So I want to just ask a quick question, and I hope that some other people may be able to relate to this and that it helps. I know you talked a lot about dates. Given an example that I was funded on April the 19th for PPP, and immediately once I got my funding, I began making payroll. So I'm, like most people, a week behind in payroll, so paying for the week before. So on the 19th, I did my payroll for my week ending April the 17th. Mm-hmm. Is that legitimate, or did I start my PPP 1 week too early?
No, so now under the rules, if it was incurred or paid, so you paid on the 19th within your covered 8-week covered period.
Okay.
And you paid.
Good. Okay.
So whatever you paid for payroll during your covered period counts. And then also whatever was incurred, whether or not it was paid, counts. So they've made it both. And that's really helpful. And again, I really believe that Treasury has really, Treasury's doing a lot of this underlying guidance. And I feel like they have really tried to make this as user-friendly as possible, because that was the ultimate goal of Congress, was to get this money out there to help keep people employed. And I think the original thought was get it out there right away, the first round, so that no one would be laid off or furloughed, during that interim. It would be really short. So I do think they are trying their best to make this work.
Okay, Tim, I've got Tim Johnson. I think there's a question in here, and I might just have to get Tim to unmute himself, but I'm going to read his comment. We received the disaster grant per email before PPP forgivable loan. The total in our application with a reduction of the former amount. We never received the SBA amount. Tim,
so you got the EIDL advance, and it just showed up in your account, and it was somewhere between 0 and 10,000, but then you didn't get the full amount of the regular EIDL loan?
We got an email saying that we were part of the EIDL, but it was reduced from 10,000 to 6,000 because as of January 31st, we had 6 employees.
Right.
And so when we did our PPP application, it came to, I think it was 33,000. And then we had to reduce, and we reduced that by the 6,000 in that.
Right.
And
At
we're
that time.
approved, right, we were approved. We got the PPP, but we still haven't received the SBA 6,000.
You didn't get the 6,000 even though it was approved?
Correct.
It should have gone and hit your bank account like right away.
It did not.
Okay, then you need to call the SBA. There's a number. If you go to the EIDL website, there's a number. It'll take you a little while to get through, but that's where you need to go. Because you should have, like everybody else who's gotten that money, it just like, when you get the notice, it's in your account. Like it's like right there. So that's not, something's gone wrong there. That's all I can tell you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Me too.
What's easy for you though is that all of your amount is still potentially forgiven. For those that got EIDL advance after they applied for PPP, they now will have an amount that they have to pay back at 1%. So some of my clients have been not accepting it all, or just paying that back right away. But you have it easier that way if you get the money. Other questions?
Robyn, if someone got a notice from EIDL, but they got the money and they got the notice from EIDL, they did not, I'm sorry, we never got any notice from EIDL, but we did get the money.
That's what's more happening.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're seeing more of, is you don't get a notice, all of a sudden you got $6,000 from the SBA in your account. You're like, oh, okay.
So
I
you're
guess I got
seeing
it.
more of that than what Tim was describing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whew, this was good, Kay. Can we just lock you in a room, Robyn? Is that okay? Is that legal?
Yeah, well, I kind of feel that way a little bit as it is, right?
Okay.
So yeah, I don't get out that much. So yeah.
I'm gonna keep the chat line open, but I want to be respectful of your time. You have been incredibly generous. Pro Bono Partnership of Atlanta has had a history of being incredibly generous with their time, and I cannot thank you enough. This has been outstanding. Y'all, is there anybody before we begin to wrap up the call that has anything pressing to ask Robyn? Don't be embarrassed, because none of us are experts in this good stuff.
It doesn't have to be on PPP either.
Yeah.
Other questions that we can help with.
This will be recorded. I'll upload it to our YouTube channel and get that out. We've got one more question. Do you have any insight, Robyn, into the possibility of the 8-week period being extended?
It won't be. It won't be. That's, if they were going to do that, they would have done it with the application. And it's very clear that this was supposed to be this sort of temporary time to get us through what Congress thought was the emergency at the moment. If there's going to be more funding, it'll be a new program. And honestly, I'm not sure that they'll agree on. Right now they had the HEROES Act that passed the House. It's not going to pass the Senate. And there's a lot of division between the three different groups, the House, the Senate, and the White House.
Really?
Very different views as to what should be covered and what should be protected and how we should be helping. And I think that those divisions are going to remain unless something larger happens. If unemployment hits 25%, then maybe they'll do differently. But right now, I think my sense of it is, and this is just my sense of it, is that they think that as the country opens up, it's never going to close back up. I think a lot of people think that just won't happen even in the fall, even if things get worse. but if it opens up, then it won't get worse. Like that the economy won't get worse than it is now, or that it's going to be in the next, once everybody files for unemployment and actually gets through. But who knows? I wish I had a crystal ball. So
I got one more question, Robyn. If based on the percentages, this organization is going to be unable to use about 4% of their PPP loan. Should they repay that now or at 8 weeks?
You have, you would incur interest on the money. You have a 6-month period of time where you don't have to pay the loan. You don't have to pay the loan back. You don't have to start paying it back. But the interest is technically accruing. So it'd be 1% of whatever that amount is. The interest on that is what, is what you're looking at. So it's pretty darn small. If you think you can pay it and use it for something positive for your organization, I would consider that. Even if it is, bonuses or whatever, I would, try and do that, but you can pay it back at any time you want, any amount.
Okay.
You don't have to wait. Now, I will tell you that once you submit your application for forgiveness under the law, there has to be a decision within 60 days by the SBA. So it's actually going to go to the lender, and the lender is supposed to do the initial review and then submit it. So, but it's within 60 days of submitting that application that a decision is supposed to be made.
Okay.
Recognize that because so many people, so many smaller organizations are all getting their money in the same amount of time, they're going to be flooded. So I don't know if they'll be able to live up to that. Just like they were supposed to put out regulations on April 27th, and they didn't.
Okay. I got one more, and then we got 2 minutes left. And if this doesn't get fully answered, I'll connect you to Robyn. But where she's asking, can their organization work with Pro Bono to draft an employee waiver to indicate the employee has come back to work on their own free will?
So if you're a client of ours, you can always reach out to your Pro Bono Partnership of Atlanta attorney. Like there's 4 of us at Pro Bono Partnership of Atlanta that are attorneys and work with clients, and we act as outside general counsel to our clients. So, and several of you on the phone are my clients, so I know you. But so if you're already a client, reach out to that attorney, whether it be me or Lori or Justine or Sarisha, or it could be Rachel too. That's a possibility, but she doesn't have a lot of clients anymore. Or if you think you would qualify, meaning that you are an existing 501c3, you serve low income or disadvantaged individuals, you can apply for our services by going to our website, and under the nonprofit tab at the top, there's a place where you can complete a request for legal assistance. And I will tell you right now, we don't have many clients applying or potential clients applying. So we'd love it. If you qualify, go ahead and apply. And then once you do and are accepted as a client, then we can help with that, with anything, any legal issue you have, we're happy to help with. I think people have been so caught up with just trying to survive that they haven't thought to apply for our services, but we're here to help. And like, I'm fielding emails from all of our clients on PPP every day. Or even doing phone calls. And then Lori, who is our employment counsel, is fielding calls every day about employment issues. If you're not a client and you meet our requirements, please go ahead and apply.
Thank you so much, Robyn. Can everybody do like a virtual class? Because I think that was really, really, really amazing. Thank you so much. Robyn, I may beg for your return if it's possible sometime in June.
Absolutely.
Okay, because I think there's still things rolling in the chat box and I don't want to miss. And I can imagine that as our minds shift, we'll be in another great space of needing to continually learn. And
if you want to send me those chats, I can try and respond by email.
Okay.
Best I can, and answer those for you.
Perfect. And Stephanie, no, that Pro Bono does work with organizations outside the Atlanta area. They're Pro Bono Partnership out of Atlanta. That was one. They had the impression that it was only Atlanta-based nonprofits. And
no, we have clients all over the state. Originally, when we started 15 years ago, we thought there were other organizations like ours around the state, and there really aren't. We have clients in Valdosta. We have a client in southeastern Georgia, Dahlonega, Rome, Macon, Gainesville, Athens. We have a whole lot of clients in Athens. So absolutely.
Well, thank you,
yes.
thank you. This has been absolutely unbelievable. I know I've written down a couple of things that I did not understand to be true that has helped our organization greatly. Y'all, we've got 4 minutes to do a quick wrap up. Tony, can you give us a 30-second, Tony Mallon, on what you just put in the chat box? Good, sir.
Yeah, this is just from a colleague who's in the Terry College. And it's, I apologize for such a lengthy post, but I wanted you to have the information. If you just go to the link there, there's an article, and she has students who can work with small businesses or nonprofits on IT and MIS issues. So it could be helping to develop database. It could be even issues related to your website and things like that. So this is just a colleague who emailed this to me, and I'm forwarding it to you all. Her name is Merrick Boudreau. And her email and phone number is there at the end of that post.
Thank you so much, Tony. A quick note before I lose anybody. Next week, we do not have a nonprofit leader call. The only why is because we are hosting that trauma-informed care training. There are 30 spots left. I think we've sold about 920 tickets, and we cap out at 950 because technology won't be able to host more than that. This is a trauma-informed care training about providing care to yourselves and others. Please, please join. We will resume the following Thursday, which I think is June 4th. June 4th. We're in June coming up. And then we'll see if we need to move to a bi-weekly or monthly format after that. But right now, I still feel there's plenty of attendance and plenty of interest in topics specifically like we have today. Robyn, again, thank you so much. Kay, I'll punt it to you for some quick updates. And then I do want to make sure we close with Q&A of any kind general to the group.
Sorry about that. So just real quickly, I want to tell you that the nonprofit training series again has a session this Friday hosted. Josh Podvin will be hosting, and it will be on volunteer engagement and focusing on doing so in the midst of COVID-19. So that's an opportunity this Friday at 9 a.m. The COVID-19 Community Response Fund to date has raised $330,000. We have done 2 distributions, and we are looking at our 3rd distribution, focusing around positive youth development as we move into the summer. So we're working on that now. And then just also a United Way reminder, want to remind you that 211 is still out there and still very accessible. If you have an organization that has information on 211 services and you have any updates, make sure you're getting that to Mark Madison at my office or myself, either one, so that we can update that and have a really good resource line on 211. So that's everything that I've got coming up, and I'll turn it back over to you, Sarah, and any questions that we have. I see that Josh has put the information for the registration for the nonprofit training series in the chat. And I do want to remind you, as Sarah was talking about the trauma care training, she said that they had sold close to 900 tickets. The event is free. You just have to register. So I want to make sure you know that. And I think it says a lot about our community as having that many people registered for something like that. And then also having 47 people on our call today at peak shows that you see value in this. So if you have topics that you would like to see, let us know.
Yes, 30 seconds, pop a topic in the chat. You know, we've been trying to listen to what you need. The other thing we're trying to do is build out some fundraising courses in June and July that wouldn't be, you know, a 1-hour call, but trying to find a couple people who can come in and share some training on, you know, reinvigorating fundraising efforts, etc. We listened to that from a previous call. Y'all are amazing.
Sarah, can I jump in for a second and let y'all know that for the last 3 years, I've been on a special task force with the Department of Revenue about sales tax and fundraising and nonprofits. And we put together this lengthy information bulletin that was ready to go out, of course, in early April. And I said, hold, no one's focused on this right now. No one's going to pay attention and no one's going to know about it. But it has a lot of clarity, and I think it has like 14 or 15 scenarios of all different kinds of fundraising and the sales tax implications of that. So I need to reconnect with the Department of Revenue and see when they're going to put that out, but just know that that's going to be coming out there. They are going to start, well, before all this COVID stuff, they were going to start to enforce more of that. And making sure that if you're selling tickets to certain things, that you're collecting sales tax and remitting it and other things like that, which a lot of nonprofits don't really pay attention to or know what those rules are. Understandably, we have enough rules to follow, but just know that will be coming out at some point, probably in 2020, and to be on the lookout for that information. We will, of course, publish it through Pro Bono Partnership of Atlanta. And if you aren't eligible to be a client, you can still sign up to get our newsletter and get that information. Sorry, I just you mentioned fundraising, and that's what I do also. So I wanted to point that out.
That's perfect. And I do want to make sure you all know you can sign up to get their newsletters. They're very, very timely. They're easy to read. So go check out their website, sign up for those. Kay, are we missing anything? It's 11:02. It's a robust day. Y'all are amazing. I hope you have an incredible day. We're taking a holiday, y'all. It's a 3-day weekend coming up. You still take holidays during COVID. Rest, relax, eat something good, treat yourself right. Have a blessed day. Robyn, thank you so much. Thank you to all. Take care, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Everybody have a great day.